that this is the third session after lunch. So I don't know what to call this.
Resurrection session.
I think you'd all agree that this is a fascinating day, and I'm also delighted, the organizers in particular, for including the military dimension as one of the topics for discussion regarding China. Frankly, over the years that I've been associated with seminars similar to this, in a major China-oriented seminar, military dimension that seldom featured. But I think it is very important to do that, especially perhaps now, after the Doklam incident, which happened just a few months ago, which highlights once again the issues of strategy and security in our bilateral relations, and also the necessity to understand the Chinese military. Now, of course, experts such as this would realize and accept that China's military has never been a very important element in its political administrative structure. It has always been relegated in terms of hierarchy, influence and prestige, much lower down the order. And this did not fundamentally change with Mao's Communist Party revolution. And that has been the case for quite some years. But now I think we all expect and accept the fact that this is likely to be different. For I think two significant reasons, and if I may just briefly highlight that before we go to the speakers, that in 1979, when Deng Xiaoping decided to launch the war against Vietnam, informed American President Carter a month in advance to not to create a heart attack for impact. The Chinese army fared very bad. In spite of the fact that they were definitely successful, destroyed the northern provinces of Vietnam, but this performance was much less satisfactory. This was 1979. Yet, Deng Xiaoping did nothing about that. He was, of course, a very competent military leader. His leadership of the Second Field Army during the Civil War was extremely important, though he was the political commissar in that. It was only 1985, well after having launched the four modernization program, where military modernization was third out of the four, he called an extended meeting of the Central Military Commission, a large meeting of the Central Military Commission, where, just to tell them that the military modernization will not receive any support till the nation is prepared with a certain amount of comprehensive national power to deal with the international situation. And that's how it continued through the 1980s. I happened to go to China for the first time in June of 1991. This was at the invitation of the PLA, following from Rajiv Gandhi's Deng Xiaoping dialogue and the acceptance of resumption of military contact. Excellent visit over 10 days. First visit at the National Defense University in Beijing. The senior strategic expert in the PLA, head of the Institute of Strategic Studies of the National Defense University, and this was June 1991, a few weeks after the first shock and awe operation for the US in Iraq. But you recall, Tomahawk missiles went through windows of buildings and destroyed contents and the personnel inside. He told me then, and this I remember very vividly even today, 26 years later, 26 years and a half, that general warfare has undergone substantive changes. And this change that is going on is going to accelerate in the years ahead. The next sentence that he said surprised me. You and I, mean India and China, need to get together and do something about this. Anyway, that's a long story. But it was from the next year onwards, 1992 onwards, that the Chinese defense budget increased by 10% a year. And it has continued on that path till today. With perhaps an exception, 7.5 perhaps in 1 year or something like that. But average well over 10%. This was to prepare the country for a level of warfare that was not in anticipation earlier or otherwise anywhere else in the world. And this was a revolution in military affairs of which much was discussed around the world then. Since then, the Jari's PLA underwent very significant and very major changes. And since then, the military is a totally different force altogether compared to what it was in 2 decades or more ago. One of the significant elements of that change, that revolution, perhaps now to be called transformation, is the way it has impacted on the nature and characteristic of future war. You know, the head of the Brookings Institution now, the previous one, Stroke Talbot, was the Deputy Secretary of State some 15-17 years ago. The new President of the Brookings Institution is General John Allen, 4-star General of the US Army, just retired, whose previous responsibility was thinking about and preparing the US Armed Forces for the next war. And some of his assessments are the American strategy. The whole question of the nature and the characteristics of war, which is under transformational changes. Perhaps not so much in the nature of war, because that still remains Clausewitzian in its concept, meant for the purpose of enhancing national interests, safeguarding it, when all other efforts have failed to the ultimate use of coercive force of the nation, and for which, of course, armies have to prepare. That remains the fundamentals of war, is an essential aspect of the war. But in the characteristics of the war, the method that the war will be fought, the tomorrow's world, the next world war, a major war between major countries. So weaponry that will be used, the way that war will be conducted will be utterly different from what we have experienced so far. And that's why even more than earlier, we have to mesh our political, diplomatic, scientific, and all other capabilities in order to enhance and make our deterrence capabilities effective in future. Now this is a challenge of military modernization today. And this is what China's PLA is undergoing at present. We missed General Narasimhan. He has an excellent presentation on the current strategic forces restructuring that's going on. But we will, of course, listen to the Admiral regarding the aspect of naval modernization. So in this context of this total changes in the way weapon systems or the weapons with which the next war will be fought will not anymore be essentially kinetic. It will be psychological, it will be resource-based. Of course, it will be fought at least in 5 dimensions. Outer space, land, sea surface, and deep under the ocean. Deep under the ocean is another source of conflict zone that is arising today as well. There's a book on the future war written by 2 authors of the US RAND Corporation, representing the DARPA of the US, which describes one particular such war 20 years hence, and how that conducted. And there, in that context, it comes out that the war begins, and perhaps all future wars may well begin, with a knocking out of satellites in space, followed by this particular war, slightly fictionalized deep strike in the Philippines on the deep under the sea, 10,000 meters under the sea, for the garnering of resources from there. And of course, they will also be the areas where weaponry will be deployed. And that day is not very far far away. I'm not going to the cycle of weapon development, etc., lead time that is required for that. But the way we need to prepare for it is to understand the capability that is required to be built for that. The type of organizational changes in the defense of the nation, which of course will be, the military will perhaps be a small part of the national effort. The larger part of the national effort will have to come from other resources. Anyway, with that as a little backdrop to what I think we should think about China's military, of course, other aspects of Chinese military is very important. The recent relationship between the military and the party leadership that's under stress. The enormous numbers of military officers, senior military officers, charged with corruption and severely punished and sentenced to death in a few cases. Tensions that are building up and likely to build up within the Chinese PLA in that context as well. These must also remain a central focus of our study of the Chinese military. So I have great pleasure in welcoming two speakers today, 15 minutes each. I would request we have one more session after this before we have dinner. So, Professor Arthur, please.
We appreciate the invitation given by the organizer. Allow me to be here and to share some of my studies with all of you. The topic assigned to me is about the China's reform on its defense industry under Xi Jinping. So I made some PowerPoint. The defense industry reform started simultaneously when Deng Xiaoping launched the economic reform. So it has been more than 35 years, and we can see it's quite persistent. And why it's persistent? Because I think the Chinese leader has this kind of a determination to keep those defense industry alive, so that they can produce, with the hope they can produce the so-called advanced weapon system. When Deng Xiaoping launched the economic reform, defense industry reform, he has the so-called 16-character instruction, so-called 军民结合、平战结合、军品优先 and 以民养军。Actually, I would say in the first almost 20 years is kind of a trial and error. To try to find a direction and the right way to modernize or reform the defense industry. So in those almost 20 years, many things have been done. For instance, the diversification of product from purely military product to also civilian product, what we call the diversification. Soviet Union, since Soviet Union collapsed, Russia has not been able to do that so far. Changing defense industry ministry to enterprise and divided each defense industry group into two groups to increase the competition. This is a result of the reform in late 1990 when Zhu Rongji was the premier. Beijing friend told me that they got pressure from Zhu Rongji, said you have to be divided. Then the defense industry sector, how many we should divide it? Then Zhu Rongji said at least two. So they divided each so-called, for instance, nuclear aviation, all into two equivalent business group. Okay, at the same time, so-called the separation of government and enterprise in terms of functions, and the breaking suppliers, traditional which were monopolized by the defense industry enterprise, and also setting up the so-called bidding system, bidding mechanism, and the setting up the supply and the end user, the kind of two system, and starting so-called pilot experimentation or capitalization of some defense industry enterprise. Briefly speaking, this listing those certain different industry enterprise in the stock market to raise money. So actually, in the first 20 years, many things have been done, and I think those paved the way for the current reform, further reform or implementation of reform under Hu Jintao and the Xi Jinping era. The term 军民融合 at the beginning, Deng Xiaoping termed the 军民结合 civil military integration, but entered when Hu Jintao come to in the year 2007, Hu Jintao changed the name from integration to fusion. One implication that they hope the further so-called integration between the civilian sector and the military sector. And also the defense industry system under PRC, so-called innovation system. We know that since Hu Jintao come to office, he urged the so-called indigenized so-called intellectual property, so on and so forth, so that they build up the so-called nationwide innovation system by imitating American or Western patents. When Xi Jinping come to office in 2012, he made a further change that the so-called civil military fusion developed under the comprehensive deepening reform, 深化改革. This reform, so-called deepening reform, was launched and in the 2015 so-called third plenary meeting of the 18th Party Congress. But I said earlier that all these kind of reform has been practiced in the previous 2 decades. So actually, it's all based on this kind of the first 20 years trial and error. Xi Jinping gave instruction about what the mission or goal for the so-called civil military fusion, particularly in terms of defense industry. He said to perfect defense industry system, improve defense S&T system for integrated innovation, reform science, defense science research and production management, as well as weapon and equipment procurement mechanism, and bring advanced civilian enterprise into research and production of military goods and maintenance. So it's quite broad in terms of scope, because it also involves, not just involve the so-called defense industry, also involve the military logistical supply. Here I briefly make the two legs to describe the Xi Jinping's defense industry reform. The first one, the transformation of defense industry research institute or academies into cooperation and capitalization of the assets. The leg two is the facilitation of spin-off and spin-off, and bring more advanced supplier into defense industry sector. The leg one, the goal the core of so-called defense industry reform under Xi Jinping to transform those research institutes into a corporation. Why? Because there's several rationale and the motivation here. Try to maximize undervalued assets, to list them in the stock market to raise funds. So to reduce state burden and to cut chronic investment redundancy, and ultimately lower the investment cost by the state. Chinese analysts give many instances about the in Western countries, for instance, for instance, the Lockheed Martin or Raytheon, those American corporations, 80% or 90% of assets are listed in the stock market. So with this kind of a practice, they can raise tremendous money from the capital market. So that's why they learned from the American or Western system So that's why the so-called the last remaining so-called research institute has to be transformed and to be capitalized. So those are the first thing. The basic principle the basic principle of the defense industry sector reform, the 小核心大协作, I mean the 小核心 means small core, 大协作 means big integration. Big integration means that to bring civilian sector to become a supplier into the defense industry sector. So this is the so-called 小核心大协作 is applied to the overall defense industry sectors. So it's also applied to the defense industry research institute and academies. So the small core is to make more capable and small. Big integration to bring social resources into become a supplier of defense industry. But the question is how to define small core and how small is enough. That is the key question. Frankly speaking, I didn't find in public sources, I didn't find any kind of related document to define how small is small and how small is enough. I didn't find any in public sources, so it got to be a confidential document. But the principle is that to classify defense industry enterprise and the research institute into two categories, core and non-core, right? And they have a whole type of the so-called corporation. The first one is so-called 国有独资. The second is 国有绝对控股 and 国有国有独资 means that actually these four type of corporation, they are kind of a SOE, actually they are part of the SOE, state-owned enterprise. But what means 国有独资 means that the state have exclusive control of the capitals. No whatever investment, even from domestic sources, it's all the investment made by the state. 国有绝对 means that the state has the majority and has the final say, but limited the investment from domestic sources. What I mean domestic sources, including those joint ventures made by the Western foreign investors. And the 国有相对控股 means should be more loosely, and the 国有参股 means the share should be much lower. So-called 国有独资 and 国有绝对控股 prohibited the investment to produce core capability. Here I find a couple cases. This case is the so-called China Aerospace Science and Industry Corporation, CASIC. In November, the Chinese media says that the CASIC has been completed its transformation, and it become the new title is that the China Aerospace Science and Industry Corporation Limited, and it become has been classified categorized as so-called 国有独资. But so far I have not found any more detailed information how the CASIC has been transformed. But apparently that because we know that the CASIC produced actually ballistic missiles like DF-15, DF-21, targeting for the so-called A2AC, and also produce so-called probably DF-41. So I think those are the probably regarded as the core capability. So it's under the so-called 国有独资. But in total, a total of the 41 defense industry research institute and academy as the first batch will be transformed before end of the next year. The next two is about the so-called to achieve the 大协作 through having civilian enterprise become supplier for defense industry sector and to root it is a different industry sector in society to convert military technology for profit. The rationale is to break so-called monopolized supplier system and to make money from the military technology for reinvestment. A typical case is the Beidou system. Beidou is under the A60 863 is approved in March 1986 by Deng Xiaoping. As A63 project is proposed by several top-notch science and engineer and science and technology experts. The rationale, the way they persuade Deng Xiaoping that without develop those kind of high tech, China will disappear from the globe. So-called 丧失求己 means literally means that will be lose its membership in the globe. So Deng Xiaoping agreed to push the A63, and apparently the GPS Beidou system is one of the approved. But what the A63 different from previous so-called science and technology development is that the A63 they require commercialization of military technology. So Beidou is one of them, and probably has done the best, I would say. And Beidou can be converted for civilian purpose and make tremendous money because I think in the next step, China will require all the domestic business to adopt the Beidou system and to get rid of the American GPS system. But I said earlier that in the first 20 years, China has made the try for the 大协作 system. But why has not been much progress? Probably the literal source I found is probably the compartmentalism and the existential inertia because the established interest, because those traditional suppliers, they want to continue to monopolize. So Xi Jinping tried to continue to break this kind of monopoly. So they will be more open than before, and open not just break the so-called traditional monopolized supply system. Xi Jinping also opened those facility and instrument of defense industry for civilian use and even for civilian research. And entry criteria for civilian business to access to more core military products. Let me make a general assessment. Reform has been started since 1978. Why Xi Jinping continued to push that in such a hasty manner? As I said, probably Xi Jinping has a sense of urgency. He wants to, without this kind of support from the advanced system, weapon system, probably China will be constrained somewhat because in the end, what if the confrontation with the United States? So there's a much need for Xi Jinping to push the reform. But also another factor is that the exhausted public financial sources, Xi Jinping needs to tackle urgent problems. For instance, most recent, 2 weeks ago, a media report said 13 provinces is running out of the pension to pay to those retired people, particularly Heilongjiang province is the worst situation. So I think the Xi Jinping has to tackle many of the urgent problems like the pension, local government debt, SOB bank debt, and the potential banking crisis. So where to raise the money? Again, from the capital market. So if Xi Jinping can, from the previous experience in the year early 2000, when the so-called experimental project to list around 30 different industries in the stock market. They raise billion of money. Well, if they listed those the so-called research institute in the stock market, the public can raise trillion of money to continue to support the defense industry sector. So I think that's why really important for Xi Jinping to continue to push and to transform those research institutes and academies, and also convert those, for instance, Beidou system into for the civilian use. So those are my brief presentation, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Ding. That was a very fine presentation. And you're focused on the military equipment modernization more than the other dimensions, but there have been equally fundamental changes in organizations, doctrines, training, as well as the human resource development as well. These are very significant changes. Now over to Admiral Chopra. I've not read out the CVs of both the presenters here. They're there in the brochure. Admiral Chopra in particular has got one of the outstanding CVs for a naval officer. He's in all the top senior positions in the Navy that one can think of. Exceptionally rare for one person to hold all of these. Now over to him for the expanding footprint of the PLA's Navy and China's quest for sea powers.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me at the back? Very good evening to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. I am the last speaker, but the jury says that it might not be a bad thing, because everyone is perked up now after an afternoon of slumber, or not really, because we had very interesting sessions. My job has been made a bit easier because many of you have touched on the maritime aspect of the Chinese quest. I'm going to look at it from the practitioner's point of view, and my views are somewhat contrarian. I think Ambassador Shiv Shankar Menon stole a bit of my thunder yesterday, but let me put it that I am a bit skeptical in the way we have sort of assessed Chinese maritime power. The ICS gave me the liberty of choosing a title, and I chose what you see on the slide. Particularly worded it like this, because the PLA Navy's expanding footprint need not necessarily lead to sea power. There are two different things altogether. So let me begin by stating at the very outset that, at least in my assessment, although the PLA Navy growth, profile and footprint have all indeed expanded rapidly, the PRC, that is China, is some distance away from being a sea power, and by virtue of that, some distance away from being a great power. It does face many challenges and certain inherent vulnerabilities, and it is important for a forum like this to dwell on this when assessing China's emergence. China has done very well, and having said that, no one, including me, can begrudge or deny China's great accomplishment in creating a blue water navy in very short time and deploying the same further afield with every passing day. A brief historical glance may be in order just to highlight the magnitude of what the Chinese have done in a field which is by its very nature long lead and takes a long time to get going. I call the Chinese Navy the iPhone Navy because it started at about the same time as the iPhone, 2008. And I think the iPhone is the only other comparable thing which has matched the speed of Chinese warship production and the Chinese Navy in general. If you recall the days before 2008, there was not much, it was in the background. But suddenly, along with the iPhone, here has come the Chinese Navy, and we're all talking about it. Okay. You must navies are essentially, till China came along, as someone said, they're a Western creation of sorts. All the great naval powers were from the West. This is the first time Asian nation is aspiring for true naval power. And the PLA itself is an army of the party, was an army of the party, and only by ex officio extension is it the armed forces of the People's Republic of China. In this, the PLA Navy itself was completely out of depth till the late 60s. Whilst the PLA Army was established in 1927, the Navy was established in 1950, and in its initial days was advised by the Soviets and supplied by them. And then after the Sino-Soviet split, it went into even more hard times, and nothing much happened till a general came along, Liu Huaqing, father of the Chinese Navy. So even generals can do passing things sometimes. I was going to take sort of pull the leg of General Narasimhan, but he's not here. So he was the one who was on the right side of Deng Xiaoping, and he had the vision to realize that if China is going to go anywhere, we're going to have a large navy, and that's where it all started. Thereafter, globalization, ambition, the China dream, if you will, and the booming Chinese economy and the thriving coastal belt all ensured that they got very maritime in their outlook. But most importantly, they got money. Navies are very expensive things, terribly expensive things. Only rich nations can afford big navies and large navies. It is, as we say, the destinies of navies and nations are inextricably linked because each feeds into the other. You can't really have a great navy unless you're a great economy, and with the navy you can ensure a great economy. So I leave it at that. As far as the history goes, I just want to mention that just before 2008 at the first deployment, Hu Jintao in 2004 came out with the 4 great principles, or what he called new historic missions, which put the Navy where it was supposed to be. And then from 2008, with the first anti-piracy patrol, we have the Chinese Navy moving out for the first time outside its territorial beat, which is the South and East China Seas. And suddenly, I was the fleet commander of Western Fleet in 2008 and was deployed, as it happened, to the east coast of Africa when this whole thing suddenly blew up, and we found Chinese naval ships present in our area of operations for the very first time. And thereafter, as you know, China has deployed 26 different escort groups in that area. Of course, from 2012, as we've all discussed, Xi Jinping, a man in a hurry, has been deploying his navy all over the place. As some of you might know, that in June this year, they exercised with the Russian Navy in the Baltic Sea of all places, and in the Mediterranean last year. So they go for impact in the Pacific. It's not just the Indian Ocean. They are deploying, they are looking at things all over. They've been on goodwill visits to Florida, to Latin America, and all over the place, and they're buying all sorts of infrastructure where they can. So that we're all aware of. Where? There? Okay, that is the Chinese concession to the Navy. It's got 3 blue stripes and the new flag, which it now flies as its naval ensign. Okay, I'm not going to, there's no time, and neither am I going to talk too much about the Chinese Navy. Suffice to say that Liao Ning's photograph is there because you can't really project power or make presence without big group of ships, call them what we call formations. A couple of ships going somewhere doesn't make an impact. And if you're going to stray outside your waters, then you're going to be a large enough number of ships. And if you have a large number of ships, You need anti-aircraft defense, anti-missile defense, anti-submarine defense. So you need a task group. Before 2015, China didn't have the possibility to venture in any particular way. This is a landmark, not because it's an aircraft carrier, but it signifies the ability of the Chinese now almost surely to be able to deploy as strike groups in the near future. Yeah, go to the next one. Okay, I'm showing this because this is a destroyer still to come. Coming this year, the Type 055, 12,000 tons for naval people who are, look at maritime affairs. This is a big ship, only second to the Zumwalt, and it again shows that they are getting ready to deploy larger units elsewhere. This is something you have to take as fact. This is no longer in the region, in the realm of conjecture. You just know that an aircraft carrier and big ships like this are going to obviously deploy outside the South China Sea. Next, if you don't mind. This is a Jin-class submarine. It is one of 4 submarines which make up base nuclear deterrent. The first guy, the Zia class, the 092, didn't work very well. This works well. There is a problem here, and the problem is Chinese reforms, which I will cover up for the general afterwards. Chinese reforms have confused the issue in China somewhere, and no one is quite sure whether the rocket force, the newly instituted rocket force, which came out of the 2nd Artillery, or Navy is going to control this. And from what I can glean, there are serious command and control issues, also because of the theater commands, but that's a subject by itself. But this is a 2007-8 operational scene. Actually, before that, China didn't really have the third triad. It had the Zia, it had JL-1, but with JL-2 and this submarine, now China actually has, like the UK, France, and the United States, a deployable, effective deterrent at sea. Next. I won't go, this is the so-called, moving around the Indian Ocean, the string of pearls, call it what you will. We have discussed it enough. Next, please. So have we discussed one red, one belt? I'll bring it up in another context. Next. Okay. So, the maritime rationale, of course, enunciated by Hu Jintao and from Deng Xiaoping words, has 2 great parts. One is great power aspirations, and other is the economy. And I will just harp a little bit on great power aspirations, because we normally don't talk about that. We link it up with the real politic of economy and other stuff. As I said, if you look at just the last 500 years of history on this planet, 70% of its surface is water. You can go to space, you can go into space, but to be present on this planet globally, you need ships. Because there is nobody else who can go legally across the planet than ships. Ever since Grotius, the Dutch jurist, enunciated Mare Liberum in 1609 as the freedom of the seas, traditionally, till after the Second World War, all that was there with any nation was 3 miles of territorial sea. The rest was the high seas. And when the United Nations went for the Convention on the High Seas in 1958 and ratified it, came into force in 1962, it was the Convention on the High Seas, which there is confusion about, as I saw in the morning, which I will speak to a little bit later. But suffice it to say, all the rest UNCLOS as a business of territorialization of the seas, of EEZs and contiguous zones and continental shelves, in my view, is actually leading to perhaps more issues than it has solved. And it has led nations to look at the seas as territory, as like land, which it cannot be, because you cannot permanently occupy the sea. And this is again a subject I'm just flagging because it's important in the world to come. And in my opinion, UNCLOS will have to be looked at again, but it's going to be very difficult to get any sort of coherence on the same. But I want to just say one thing. If you want to be a global power, you better be visible at sea. And my submarine friends are here. You have to be visible. You have to be present. Navies do have certain attributes. That's why we are talking about them. Unlike armies and air forces, they are not trans-border forces. They don't cross borders. They are deployed in peacetime and wartime in international waters. They don't need any permission, no air flights, nothing. And therefore, they have access to all the world's coastlines. They are mobile, they are versatile, they can attack the land, and they have stealth. But beyond this, what navies can do, which other services, other platforms cannot, is what we call sustained reach. You can travel the whole world in an aircraft, you can refuel them also, but you can't go and sit for 3 months off the coast of Peru if you so desire. So that is what we call poise. Warships can poise in international water. By virtue of that poise, they can leverage things on land. They are hugely wonderful for signalese, for diplomatic signalese. They can appear on the horizon and disappear off the horizon without the stigma of retreat. They can send messages of force, of coercion, of support, and they can disappear. They are very effective instruments of statecraft in peacetime and in crisis. And I am very glad to say that our Ministry of External Affairs has completely hoisted, as we say in the Navy, this particular aspect of maritime forces, and we are beginning to see a symbiosis of sorts between the Navy and MEA, which we have been, at least people like me, for the last 40 years, trying to push. Okay, as you can see, I can go all over the place. It is clear that for China to survive, for the Chinese Communist Party to survive, its economy must survive. The economy has got huge excess capacity. It needs the markets of the Indian Ocean specifically. When I say Indian Ocean, we are talking the Northwest Indian Ocean, the Persian Gulf for energy, but we're also talking Africa. Huge amount of development. We're talking Central Asia, we're talking the Bay of Bengal. If China doesn't get access and cannot deploy easily, its economy is in trouble with all that excess investment. Therefore, its investments, its resources, all that. But it's got 3 problems in the Indian Ocean. 3 big ones. One, of course, the famous Malacca dilemma. He's very choked up. Anything to China goes through Malacca or Sunda or wherever. He's got a simultaneously rising power in the middle end of the Indian Ocean, bang on, India, with completely free access to both sides of the Indian Ocean, with its bases east and west, no logistic lines. He's sitting duck as far as I'm concerned, and I'm not being militaristic, or I'm not getting carried away with my, because I can see the smiles on the face of some of the audience. But the fact is, the Indian lines of communication, the Indian lines of logistics in the Indian Ocean are unparalleled of any country in any ocean. Free access on both sides, free ability to deploy, and therefore to act in various fashions. He's also got a third problem, and that is extra-regional powers' interest in the Indian Ocean. We're talking about the United States, Russia, EU, Japan, everybody else. Because 80% of the trade on this new ocean highway is extra-regional in nature. 80% of the trade which crisscrosses the Indian Ocean is neither from the Indian Ocean littoral nor to the Indian Ocean littoral. And this is a big thing. And therefore you see the interest of the European Union, the United States, that all this trade has to be sort of this thing. Okay, as I thought I'll be rushed for time, let me now just come briefly in the last 5 minutes to what are China's challenges. Where are its vulnerabilities? What are its challenges? And I'm not gloating over this, I'm just trying to bring it to the fore so that we have informed debate on his maritime abilities. The first is geography. Can you go ahead, please? You know, this is the worst geography for a maritime power in the world. His access to the Pacific is blocked by the first and second and third island chains. I've shown you the first. His passage into the Indian Ocean is even worse through those 3 straits which I mentioned. Even if he owns the South China Sea, even if he owns it completely, what is he going to do? Where is carriers and all that? They have to pass through choke points. And in choke points, as naval officers will certainly know, the navies are hugely, all ships are hugely vulnerable. Because the sea is an open space and ships can go anywhere. When they have to go somewhere, then you can find them and you can destroy them. So he's got a problem. I just want to make one comparison, and that is with Russia, because, and I'm sure I can discuss this with Ambassador Raghavan elsewhere, but I'll make in fact two comparisons with Russia. Russia has been an aspiring great power for as long as we can remember. Peter the Great tried to make it a maritime power. The first Tsar who took it away created St. Petersburg and a Russian navy. Catherine the Great made the Russian navy operate from the Black Sea. But in both places, the Russian navy has nowhere to go. It operates from the White Sea and those ports right up the north, where they have to go through the Greenland UK gap if they have to access the Atlantic Ocean. And from the Black Sea, his situation is even worse, because he goes through the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles. So geography limits Russia's ability to become a sea power. Peter the Great tried, Catherine tried, Tsar Alexander I tried, Gorshkov tried. And they succeeded in building up a big navy, as I said. But sea power was curtailed because of this geographical impediments. The second problem is bases. You know, every ship, and I think I want to make this clear, there's a lot of confusion on it. Every ship needs water, food, oil, water, fuel and provisions. But warships need ordnance, ammunition, missiles, replenishment. So a place is different from a base. A base is one, there are three aspects to a base. In there you can replenish your ordnance. Our entire function of the armed forces is to deliver ordnance accurately on target. If you can't do that, all the rest of this strategic game becomes well and nigh, because all the orders when you finally get from the president or the prime minister, you will have to develop ordnance on target. And ammunition you can't get at a place, you can get it at a base. The second thing about a base is repair. If you see the old Royal Navy terminology, its commander-in-chief would make a signal to the fleet, say the fleet will repair to Malta. It says will repair to Malta, because warships need a whole huge repairs on their propulsion, weapons, radars, all sorts of things. You just can't go to Hambantota and get that. You need a base. And the third most important thing about a base is it's your ability to defend it. Our principles of war, the fourth or fifth principle is security of the base. There's no base if you can't secure it. Can Djibouti be secured? It's got 4 western bases next to it. It's entirely vulnerable. Can Hambantota be secured? And there is also, therefore, mentioned in the morning, the bases which are worrying are what can be possibly defended with very close allies. Gwadar, certainly, but Karachi because that's the kind of ship he's going to bring there for repair. What he's supplying to Bangladesh or to Myanmar are the things that he will want his own, so that Bangladesh, Myanmar, Pakistan create the repair facilities at those places which he can go and bring his ships to. So repair. So I hope I have dwelt on geography and bases. Lastly, naval power, global power, requires global presence. The Soviets did a great job. Gorshkov built up a navy which had presence in the Indian, Atlantic, Pacific, Mediterranean, and was vying with the US Navy at every step of the way. China has barely moved out of the South China Sea. Deploying in the Indian Ocean is not the same as combat capability. And he can't defend himself in the Mediterranean or the Atlantic or the Pacific. I'll give you a hypothetical example. If suppose, hypothetical, if the US were to blockade these reefs in the South China Sea, I'm talking only as a naval officer, and China has only two choices, either to run the blockade or not to run it. If it runs the blockade, there will be a firefight. Everyone presumes that under the nuclear umbrella, none of these firefights will go beyond a point. But as we have seen, there is room for conventional problems. And in a maritime slugfest, it doesn't have to be in the South China Sea. Once you open the maritime front, you can be attacked in the Mediterranean or and there's no Chinese presence there. The major battles of World War I and II between Germany and the United Kingdom were fought not near Germany or not near England, but off the coast of Latin America. The Battle of the Coronado Islands, the Battle of the First Battle of the Falklands. Navies don't fight near their homelands. It is not the job of navies to defend coast. That is the Coast Guard. The navies move out into the deep ocean, search out the enemy, bring him to battle, and destroy him as far away from the homeland as possible. So this is something that, and we don't have, that's another issue about an aggressive thing. I'll just take 2 minutes. I will not go into, I'll just bring out what I wanted to talk. Allies, lack of allies, neutrality. There's a reaction and pushback for simultaneous lack of soft power, experience, reforms having affected him negatively. I can talk these as questions. He's also leapfrogging too fast, too much of a hurry, not getting the experience, not dwelling on things. His operational tempo is all mixed up. With that, I will conclude with 1 or 2 points. The first point is that indeed, ever since the Second World War, there have been 2, what you can call, naval conflicts of some consequence. One was the Falklands War, one was the Indo-Pak War of 1970. On one hand, you see the whole world building up navy and maritime capability. On the other hand, we don't have a conflict. People have forgotten, seriously, rulers, leaders, admirals, ambassadors, everyone has forgotten what the real war is going to be like. Everyone looks in terms of peacetime deployment of navies, which is fine. But there is practitioners of violence, like I used to be, have to think of it in a different sort of fashion. And peacetime deployment is a far cry from combat. I will end it here by saying, in my assessment, China is punching above its weight. He's not yet a great power. He wants to be, no problem with that. But purely, he's not yet there. He's not yet there. And he's using this strategic window of opportunity. He's hastening things, which may well be his undoing. He needs stability more than anything else. What he's generating is instability. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral Chopra. I think you've summarized the maritime dimension of China's challenge very effectively indeed. Now we have over 10 minutes, perhaps a little more questions. Both speakers cover a wide field, and I'm sure you have a lot to ask each of them. Yes, sir. Yes,
Thank you both for really good presentations. But to Admiral Chopra, just one question. What about short of conflict? There are other uses of the Navy, political uses. And when you see what China has done in the South China Sea, converted into a Chinese lake over the last 5 years with a sort of cabbage strategy, never quite reaching the threshold. So what about all those uses? Surely what China has built up has other uses and is working.
I couldn't agree more, sir. Like I said, in peacetime, it was an instrument to be used. And as long as it doesn't develop into a hot war, he will always succeed because he's already got presence, he's already painted tall, and China has effectively used the growth of its navy to do what it did in the South China Sea. It's also doing the same in the Indian Ocean. China just has to be careful that he doesn't miscalculate and actually go into hostilities. If China were to go into hostilities, then he's got a problem. Short of hostilities, there are many, as I said, uses of the Navy, which I think we will also imbibe in time. Yes.
A question for the Admiral. I was intrigued by a statement you made in passing at the end. At the beginning, you said that new theatre commands had created serious command and control problems. Could you elaborate on that a bit, please?
Yeah. Actually, I wrote an article on this a while ago, so I'm up to date on it. The article's title was The PLA Modernization, a grip on power, or is it for actual modernization? But my conclusion was, whatever the impetus for the modernization and PLA reforms, the way they've been undertaken by Xi Jinping in the last 5 years must have resulted, I say as a military man, in diluting the fighting efficiency of the PLA. For the simple reason that almost the amount of commanders who have been changed along with their staffs, coupled with the reorganization of the theatre commands, coupled with the organization of the CMC, coupled with the command and control arrangements over the whole apparatus, is too much. I mean, he's doing it in a hurry. Maybe 5-6 years from now it will settle down. The point I made in passing was, in this next 3 to 4 years after these reforms have come into effect, to my mind, if you were to take them into combat today, they would be less efficient than they would have been 3 years ago. It's too much reform, too quickly, too many areas.
Yes. I had a question to Professor Singh. This is also a command and control question. Civil-military integration, if you go by the American experience or what we have seen in India, it's never been easy at the best of times. So, with all these reforms going on simultaneously in the Chinese system, how, or in your experience over the last few years, have you spotted? Can you give us some examples of how civil-military integration has not really functioned, or how these problems have actually been resolved? We know that the space industry, the space sector in China is under military command. In India, it's under civilian command. And they are quite different cultures. And suddenly, you are expecting the civilian sector in India, in China, to step up to the needs of what the generals want. You can't put a uniform on a scientist and expect him to, follow the line. So how is Xi Jinping's military going to deal with this particular problem? I would be particularly interested in some examples if you have. Thank you.
I gave you one example of nuclear submarines, ballistic missile submarines. Someone has to control them. They have to be deployed. Weapons have to be sort of got ready. So there's a whole series of activities which are required to be done. And they have a civil military interface. And they're normally handled in various countries in various ways. In the case of the Chinese setup, before this, it was all handled by the 4 departments in the CMC. And they were given orders to the Navy through Naval Headquarters and the 3 fleets. Now you've introduced theatre command. There's a theatre commander, there's a naval chief, and there are the submarines which we all know are difficult as far as command and control are concerned. So this is one area they have to sort out. There are a few articles on the net by informed commentators you may like to read on the issue of command and control of the Chinese SSBMs. The second point is that there are many integrations going on. What you are talking about, theatre command, is more of integration between the various armed forces. And that is never an easy job, as the United States learned, as we have been debating. And I think it will take them 3 or 4, 5 years to get everything going. Commanders in all armed forces require specialized staff. Commanders think out things, intent, and then staff translate them into orders to go to formations down the line with their staff. It is a fairly complex thing done with. So if you remove staffs along with the commanders, because you want to, say, drive out corruption or whatever you may think you're doing, or you want to get a grip on the military, or you want to vendetta against somebody, whatever the reason, you are playing around with basic command and control structures. And the same problem which is faced everywhere, and especially true of navies. Normally jointness, and I will venture this here, this is my own opinion, I am not in favor of jointness, tri-service jointness for war fighting. There is a requirement of very close integration between the Army and Air Force, because the Army doesn't operate its own Air Force. For the Navy, mostly the Army has little to do with it except amphibious or expeditionary operation. And the Navy controls its own air force. And I would even go further to say, since you have asked this question and there are some gentlemen here who may like to hear it, that should I say that theatre command is a concept picked up from global theatres in the First World War, Abyssinian theatre, Middle Eastern theatre, and today is the US concept with the Pacific theatre, an African theatre. Applying theatres to parts of a country, China has blindly, and in my view, I'm happy about it, rather foolishly, just taken the American model and tried to implant it on their system. I think they will live to regret it. Others don't agree with me. I am in the minority in this, but I understand how important it is, having been in operational command of many sort of formations, for things to work smoothly. You need some independent action. You don't need entanglements of the kind you don't do. What I wanted to say was, the Second World War was fought out of the United States. There were 25,000 planes under the Army Air Corps. There's no problem. The Air Force is an invention from the RAF post-1947. The Air Force has a role, and I'm glad there's no air marshal here, but there is a problem with the Air Force as far as the Army is concerned, as Army is only looking for two things from the Air Force: tactical airlift and close air support. Now, you cannot go running to the Air Force every time you want any of them. So my thing is, give these two to the Army and forget the theatre command jointness. We did a pretty good job in 71. We can do it again if required. But that's another thing. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, sir. Lady there.
So my question is to Admiral Chopra. Sir, my experience with China is that, whatever I have studied, is that China has this habit of giving soft loans, and in turn, when they extract interest, it's often in kind, like Hambantota is an example. So how is it affecting the Indian Navy, and is it like, are they getting affected by this negatively, or can they do something about it?
Sorry, I missed a part of it. Can you repeat that?
How this giving soft loans, like China gives soft loans and then it extracts often various benefits.
Yeah.
Like Hambantota Port I gave as an example.
Yeah.
So how is it affecting the Indian Navy, and can they do something about it?
No, I don't think the Indian Navy is, like I tried to tell you, but I don't think the Navy is overtly concerned about Hambantota. As a Chinese, possible Chinese base, it's not defensible. It is not of any threat during wartime. It is of threat during various possible scenarios of crisis which may develop in the Indian Ocean. As I was telling somebody, I discovered a new acronym last week in my readings, and that was HDIC, Heavily Indebted Poor Countries, HIPCs. Now that is a new class of country which has emerged. And I think China has invented a new class of country. So I don't know how far this will really go, but it's not something that the Navy has to really overtly be concerned with.
Any others? Okay, I think time is also up, but you all agree that we were a very interesting discussion. I wish we could also have had a discussion regarding China's land frontiers and challenges regarding the continental defense, power projection in that area, and others related to that. There are two things that we need to look out about military modernization and military development for the China. First is that the enormous amount of construction, restructuring that's going on costs a lot of money. And that sort of money is going to be a very serious challenge for China to actually meet, either in the short term or even in the medium term. Now, of course, nobody, I think, no two economists really agree regarding the state of the Chinese economy. But there are strains showing at many places. One of these is some of the international constructions that they're taking on all over the world, but particularly in our region, whether it's the Hambantota, Colombo Port, etc. Now, the rate of interest at which these projects are being supported by China, constructed by Chinese companies, are not sustainable. These cannot be met by the host countries where these constructions are taking place. The utility from those projects will not meet the revenue requirements anywhere near what is required to be met through the interest payments. So there will be a serious challenge, perhaps a fallout and a consequent fall back on some of these projects as a result of that. Second, I think probably suggests this is for support what the Admiral said regarding that massive restructuring that is going on in the Chinese armed forces. This is by far the most massive restructuring of a major military force, and this is the largest military force in the world that we're talking about, that is currently ongoing. To have that happen within a period of 1 year or 2 years, and to iron out the several difficulties that have to be met and countered is a very high expectation. And I'm not sure, in the experience of many other places, this has not succeeded in that short a period. But that this is a forward-looking, innovative restructuring of forces meant for tomorrow's wars, I think should also be accepted. Second is civil-military relations. Over the last few years, civil-military relations have been under severe strain. I can think of absolutely no army where so large numbers of very senior military officers have been court-martialed, have been actually dealt with in the legal process, put for long years under prison or executed. How would that impact? And the levels of corruption, the stories of which many of you must be aware, really is beyond one's visualization. How could any organization sustain and absorb such levels of fundamental corruption? But anyway, China is on the move. The party is making every effort. The cost of failure is going to be immense. And therefore, I think these strains, if they exist, will show. And perhaps these are what we need to follow and try to understand as to where and how the development will take place. Well, I think we will all agree that both the presentations have been really very interesting. I wish we could have another session as well. It would have been even better. But nevertheless, please give a hand to both of them.